The thing we have to guard against is the charlatans in the UFO community.
Yeah.
Getting the platform and thereby making all of us look bad. And that could derail disclosure because they say, well, you know, it's just nuts believe this stuff, so we don't have to worry about it. We have to be very careful about what we say, how we say it, and make sure that we have the facts to back it up. So when I say to you, such and such a case was classified at one time, it's now declassified, and the military says, well, you never classified these sorts of things, I can show you the document with the classification markings on it, and you can see that these things had been classified at one time. I know in today's world, a lot of times they say, well, the Blue Book files were never classified. I can show you classified documents from the Project Blue Book files. I mean, you can see where they mark through the secret, they mark through the confidential, you can see that. So to assist in that, we must be very careful in our research. We must press forward with our research so we have good cases and good information, but we have to be very careful to guard against the people who are basically making it up. And there's a lot of them running around telling stories that simply are not true and make absolutely no sense. When the skeptics say that there's no proof, I often say, what do you want in the way of proof? You want radar cases? We got it. You want photographic evidence? We got it. You want multiple witness cases? You want interacting with the environment? You want all of this stuff exists. It's just that a lot of the scientists, a lot of the media don't want to take a look at it, fearing of losing their credibility. And that's happened. We've seen that happen with people who have come forward with their stories and what's happened to them afterwards.
Greetings and welcome to the Vortex. I'm your host, Daniel Allen Jones, and I'm very honored to be here with Kevin Randle. Kevin, it's an honor to be here with you.
We're here in Roswell.
In Roswell. This is the annual festival. It's the biggest event here of the year. I think it brings in so many people, but aside from the pop culture, the fun celebrations we have out here on the street in the museum, there's some real core issues that the researchers, the investigators, and people such as yourself have really done a great job of uncovering to show us that the phenomenon of ufology, the study of UFOs, and even alien and extraterrestrial life goes very deep and shrouded in secrecy. And so you've done an immense work to see how this has gone for several decades of being covered up and not being given to the appropriate people, scientists, citizens, and government officials that would otherwise possibly benefit from this information. So tell us, what has it been like to go through these years and see how this has just been something that's been concealed from the public and from those who would otherwise do good to know about this information?
The problem we have is the phenomenon sort of exploded in 1947, right after World War II. And we can see from the documentation that's available to us that they being the military, they being the government, worried about the implications of this. If this craft was a foreign manufacturer, not necessarily alien, but one of our competitors in the world, this now demonstrates a technological leap that puts them far above us in that realm. And so I can understand the secrecy at the time. They wanted to be able to find out the answers. They wanted to be able to answer questions about it. So when the public came to them and said, what are we talking about here, they would have answers, but they didn't get the answers. And I think that's the problem, is that they haven't gotten the answers. And so we've got something that was secret until they get the answers, but they're still searching for the answers. And the way to, I guess, keep this concealed, or the reason to keep this concealed, was to wait for the proper time. They were worried about panic, they were worried about that sort of thing. And nothing has happened since that time to reveal it well, they may know exactly what it is, but there's nothing that requires them to reveal it to us. And so the secrecy persists. And I don't understand why it persists till today, but we can document the secrecy and the lies told by the government. The best example is Senator Jeff Bingaman from New Mexico wrote to the Air Force and asked them about a project named Moondust. Moondust was to recover returning space debris of foreign manufacture or unknown origin, clearly as UFOs. We found documents. In the 1980s, documents were released to the State Department that had been formally classified that revealed Moondust. I, looking through the Project Blue Book files, later on found 4 cases labeled Moondust. I don't know why nobody found those before. But the point is, once that happened, Bingaman wrote to the Air Force and said, "You'd like to know about Project Moondust." And the Air Force wrote back and said, "There's no such project. Never existed." The documents were given to him, sent to him, and the Air Force said, "We'd like to amend our last answer. The project did exist, but it was never used." I'm thinking, would you like to see the documents to show it was deployed? Because those exist too. Moondust was used. So we've got military personnel lying to United States senators about it for the purpose of secrecy. And sometimes the secrecy is justified. We have to keep that in mind. Sometimes there's things that would impact national security that must be kept secret. I think specifically of the sightings at Malmstrom Air Force Base in 1967, Belt, Montana, where something hovering over missile platoon knocked out all 10 missiles. They could not, the go codes all went away. They could not access their missiles. Here's an outside force influencing our capability of retaliating. That's national security. And that was, I think, very frightening for them at the time. But some of these other sightings that they label as national security or they lie about makes no sense whatsoever. And sometimes the Air Force is so busy arguing with witnesses and arguing with researchers about what the true nature of it was, everybody sort of avoided the investigation itself. We got involved in the arguments and didn't advance us anywhere. So we have the secrecy that persists today, although it seems that we might be moving a little bit closer to learning more about it from things that have happened in the last few weeks and the last few months, telling it the disclosures coming, the Navy Tic Tac sightings, for example, being publicized, and other suggestions that they're kind of loosening the reins on the secrecy, so something may be coming down the pipe. Although I guess President Trump in the last couple of days said, well, he's been briefed on this stuff, he just doesn't believe it, but he believes our pilots. So
sure.
It doesn't take us anywhere.
I think it's interesting to see, as you said, defense secrecy is a real issue. We have to have these protocols in place because it's something that not everyone has a need to know about. I think that's a big part of how things are kept tight when it comes to the compartmentalization and how people are having a need to know or not having a need to know. And it could be that President Trump doesn't have a need to know about some of these things, as some presidents in the past may have not had a need to know as well. Well,
the president can determine what he has a need to know and what he doesn't. And if I'm the president and I ask you a question, and you say, "I'm sorry, Mr. President, you have the need to know," my next sentence to you is, "You're fired, bring in your deputy." I'll ask him the question, and if he tells me the same thing, he's fired, and I'll go down the chain until I find someone who will tell me what I want to know. As president, I can do that.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know of another position that has that kind of power, that you can cut United States senators out of the loop. You can cut congressmen out of the loop. You can cut some bureaucrats out of the loop. But when you get to the president, it's very difficult to keep him from knowing what he wants to know.
Sure. Well,
which is not to say he would tell everything that he knows.
Of course.
Or he may be convinced that by saying he doesn't really know much or he doesn't believe it is the best course for him to take given the circumstances.
It very well could be. And you did touch upon something I think is really prevalent as of late. We have a lot of pressure being put on Congress and the military, especially the Navy, to revise their protocols for addressing reports of unidentified aerial phenomenon, UFOs or UAP. And so what are your thoughts on how this will play a role in what people commonly refer to as disclosure, this movement that we think is going to take place either on a large scale or very subtle step-by-step scale? What are your thoughts on that?
The thing we have to guard against is the charlatans in the UFO community.
Yeah.
Getting the platform and thereby making all of us look bad. And that could derail disclosure because they say, well, it's just nuts believe this stuff, so we don't have to worry about it. We have to be very careful about what we say, how we say it, and make sure that we have the facts to back it up. So when I say to you, such and such a case was classified at one time, it's now declassified, and the military says, well, you never classified these sorts of things, I can show you the document with the classification markings on it, and you can see that these things had been classified at one time. I know in today's world, a lot of times they say, well, the Blue Book files were never classified. I can show you classified documents from the Project Blue Book files. I mean, you can see where they mark through the secret, they mark through the confidential, you can see that. So to assist in that, we must be very careful in our research. We must press forward with our research so we have good cases and good information, but we have to be very careful to guard against the people who are basically making it up. And there's a lot of them running around telling stories that simply are not true and make absolutely no sense.
No way to verify it, not substantial enough to find these sources.
Contradicts themselves in the course of the telling of the story, or change the story as they learn more information, that sort of thing.
It's incredible to see how it's obscured this field, and we're glad to have people such as yourself who go out and find the documentation that can verify a lot of these claims, which otherwise seem very lofty or too extraordinary to be true. Now, even now, after decades, there are people who still think this subject is nonsensical or it's all imaginative, these people are hallucinating. What do you say with people in that mindset?
I usually tell them that we have the information, we have the documentation, we have the proof. You know, if you think it's a hallucination, how did the guy manifest these photographs with an illusion? Here are landing trace cases where the witnesses saw the thing land, it left traces and it took off. How is that an illusion? I think it was Ted Phillips was a UFO investigator who studied landing trace cases. And by looking at the configuration of the landing traces, he could describe the craft. Well, that suggests a continuity there that leads us to good information. If he said, like, it had a tricycle landing gear, the disc would have a dome on it this way. That is kind of repeatability, one of the things they want. When the skeptics say that there's no proof, I often say, what do you want in the way of proof? You want radar cases? We got it. You want photographic evidence? We got it. You want multiple witness cases? You want interacting with the environment? You want all of this stuff exists. It's just that a lot of the scientists, a lot of the media don't want to take a look at it, fearing of losing their credibility. And that's happened. We've seen that happen with people who have come forward with their stories and what's happened to them afterwards. So there's a real problem with that. So we have to guard against that as well. We don't want to disclose something that is going to harm somebody's career path. I can't tell you how many times we've talked about police officers who've reported UFOs, and within a year they're no longer with the police department. It's been a very traumatic experience to them, and they've had to leave the police departments because of that. So you've got to look at all of that sort of thing.
It's incredible. So you've done a great deal of work, written a number of books here. For people interested in following up with your work, where can they go to find out more?
Well, I have a blog, www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com. I host a radio show / podcast. And I usually link to that on my blog. So after I've done the show, I do a little synopsis of it with maybe some more information that they can look up, and a link to the radio show so you can listen to it there. Books are at Amazon. You can buy them there. You can find them in the bookstores and that sort of thing. The book I did on Roswell last was called Roswell in the 21st Century, and I tried to make it a dispassionate examination of the case, so looking at a cold case. Where are we today? And revealed the problems with some of the witness testimony, some of the witnesses, but brought in other things that had not been really examined before. So I looked at the whole spectrum of the Roswell case. And then I did a good book on the Socorro landing called Encounters in the Desert, Lonnie Zamora, and discovered additional witnesses and things like that. So that's where you can find all that stuff in the blog and looking me up on Amazon.
Very good. So we'd like to see how, with all the information coming out, there are people still coming out of the woodwork we need to get with, we need to interview, get their testimony. I think these accounts are very important to continue to substantiate and verify a lot of these claims, again, that otherwise people won't know about. And so you've done a great job of documenting that, acquiring the documentation that supports these claims, and we're making new discoveries every day. I like to think that we won't know if we don't go, and you've done just that. You've gone in, you've done the work to uncover this material. So Kevin, thank you for your time today. It's been a good honor.
Thank you.
If you liked this video, be sure to check out our other content and get connected on our page and social media sites. Every day, new discoveries are being made all across the world and beyond, so let's work together to find out what's next. And remember, we won't know if we don't go. I'll see you in the Vortex.